Natalie, you always have something new going on. What do you have to share with us here today?
Oh my gosh, where do we start? Well, we were talking about off camera. One of the things that I've been working on in my fencing practice and also my meditation practice is energy fluctuations. So a lot of times when we're in a bout, the thoughts that we have an enormous impact on our fencing. And so I've been doing a lot of like post-tournament analysis of my energy fluctuations, of my thoughts during the bout, how I feel when I'm fencing my worst and how I feel when I'm fencing my best. And that's really been incredibly informative.
And this is all journaling?
It's all journaling.
Okay, so it's not tape recording or anything like that?
No, it's all journaling. So it's mostly, I try to, the last World Cup I fenced at, and the last NAC and all the, my recent tournaments, at the end I ask myself, okay, throughout the day, how did I feel when I was fencing my best? What thoughts came into my mind? How did I feel energetically? How was I moving? How was my footwork? What actions was I using? And then I asked myself the same question of how did I feel when I was fencing my worst? How was my footwork? What actions was I using? How energetic did I feel? And do you want me to share?
I mean, if you want, it sounds like this is a rather new process for you, right? The last few months.
Yeah, it's something like since I've been.
You mentioned Richmond as the NAC, but maybe before that you were practicing this?
Yeah, since right before Richmond.
Okay.
Probably. I actually read one of Aladar Kogler's books.
I was going to ask, what inspired this?
Yeah, I was reading one of Aladar's books, and then I actually ended up talking about it.
I was thinking Aladar the whole time. That sounds very much like his approach.
I know. He's a yogi, so.
Was there someone else other than Aladar that had kind of inspired this, or purely Aladar?
Well, I practice meditation, and I have a strong yoga practice that I stick to, and then I also have an amazing meditation teacher, Lisette Garcia, and so some of these concepts were things that she had talked about a while back. She gave a talk earlier this calendar year on Mahamudra meditation, which Mahamudra meditation kind of breaks down the stages of meditation into 9 stages. And so it's something that I've kind of thought about with my fencing, but very recently it all kind of came together, and I'm like, wait a second, I totally feel this. And I remember during her talk, Lisette was saying, some people call her Lama Lisette. Lama Lisette was saying that she, when she was meditating, as soon as one of those thoughts entered her mind that would distract her, she was like a ninja at chopping it and stopping it where it started. And I really think of fencing as a form of active meditation, and I think that it's very, very easy to get distracted and to lose concentration, especially during a high pressure situation or during a critical moment in a bout when we're extremely vulnerable, and a lot of times our fears come up during that time. So especially when you're ahead, I think for me and some of my teammates that I've spoken to, when we're ahead and someone starts catching up is probably it's a very critical time, but it's also a time where there's an incredible amount of pressure because you feel like you have everything to lose. And so you're fencing, instead of fencing to win, you're fencing not to lose. And so that way of thinking about fencing is energetically totally different than I'm going to go get the touches.
Now you've had opportunities to experience both that high pressure situation here in the season with the Richmond NAC already passed and also the first World Cup behind us, but also in the off season when it sounds like you started this during the summer. What have you noticed or experienced between those two different time periods of being able to exercise this new type of meditation and journaling? That's a really
good question. So one thing that I've noticed in this process, and mind you, this process is incredibly personal, so it's something that someone could delve into. Anyone's welcome to reach out to me if they're wondering about it, but through this process, it's really a process of self-discovery. So for me personally, I've noticed that a lot of times I'll have negative thoughts that enter my head, for example, and a lot of time it's related to my fears, right? And so I'll be fencing and I'll have a thought that comes in you're going to lose this next touch. And so I've been practicing to replace that thought immediately with something positive, no, I'm going to get this next touch. Or, wow, there's a lot of touches left in the bout. We're only at 2 touches, and all these weird thoughts enter we're only at 2 touches and already you're feeling a little tired. And then I immediately replace it with, no, I'm feeling energetic. I feel great. I can do this. And so when those negative thoughts come in, stopping them, I think it's hard. Lama Lisette, my meditation teacher, talks about stopping them right as they're starting, and I think that's incredibly difficult to do because that requires a lot of self-observation and a lot of self-awareness. and a lot of us, are not quite there yet. So sometimes if those negative thoughts get to the point where they've manifested and they've entered your mind as like a full, complete thought, I've just been working on replacing it immediately and then refocusing.
And focusing on these very like small chunks, one at a time, to hopefully develop like this very comprehensive approach.
Right, like you mean small chunks within my fencing practice, or during a bout?
It sounds like focusing firstly on just one thought at a time and controlling simply like a single thought.
Totally.
And intending that will translate into like your overall mentality and positive self.
Yeah, and I do think that these things can build, and so the more that we're aware of, I think the first step is just being aware that there's internal chatter in your mind. And once you're aware that there's that internal dialogue going on almost constantly that's incessant, then that's a huge life realization. Like a few years ago I was reading this book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there is internal chatter that's nonstop, that's always going on. And so once I think you can get to the point where you realize that, then that's like the first step of the journey. And then the next thing is, okay, what is the internal dialogue? A lot of times the internal dialogue is kind of abusive and not really nice, and it's our own inner roommate that we're having to deal with.
And so, with that, are you noticing any tangible results so far where you go into a bout and you are having intention and confidence and saying like, no, I'm going to win this bout? Has your confidence, or where have you seen a change, if any?
Well, totally. I think especially in training, because that's where I've spent most hours practicing this. The season's just started, but mostly in training, I notice that whenever I'm starting to have these thoughts, I immediately replace them, and if necessary, I do some kind of a reset. And so one of our national women's épée coaches, Sebastian Dos Santos, and I were talking about it, and we've talked extensively about just like having a reset. And so I've been really, as soon as these thoughts happen, or as soon as I feel like I'm getting unfocused, I have a couple things that I do, which again are really, really personal, and everyone has to devise their own reset. But I've had a couple things that I do on my own to reset. I think some people use like a phrase to reset. Some people use a certain breathing technique. Some people it's just a placement of their eyes, like where they refocus, paying attention to your inner breath. All these tying your shoe can be a reset technique. So all these different reset techniques to really get your mind back to focusing, because that's what the bout is all about. And it's a fight. Like fencing is a fight. It's a struggle, and that's okay. That's part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for those watching and those specifically fencers that want to kind of improve their psyche, is Aladar's book the book to read, the place to start?
He has a lot of books. I think it's an internal.
So was it like one touch at a time?
No, it was mental preparation.
Mental preparation.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't even know where you can find that book. But I got it from one of his students, who's a really good friend of mine, so I don't know. But I think if you really want to start on this journey, it's all about self-observation. So the first step is self-observation. It's logging what you're doing during the bout. It's being aware while you're fencing, and then afterwards, I like to write, obviously. But I know that's not everyone's like method, but you can find your own way. But observing yourself, your mental fluctuations, what's going on in the bout. Are you losing concentration during the bouts? Are there specific triggers that are getting you to lose concentration? What are they? Why? How do they relate to your fears or desires?
Excellent. All right. Well, that's it sounds like self-awareness is the place for all fencers to start.
Totally.
All right, Natalie, thank you, and good luck on your journey.
Thank you.